So, Steve, what do you know about the Arab Spring?
Well, other than that, social media played a huge role in shaping political debates, uprisings, demonstrations, and whatnot in many countries. Uh, Quite a bit went down over there.
That's right. The Arab Spring is a term used to describe a series of events and revolutions that impacted much of the Arab world from West Africa to Kuwait.
The four countries I would say that stand out the most are Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. Tunisia, especially with a corrupt government, high unemployment, and a poor economy, also extortion, and street vendors having to bribe municipal officials to barely even get by to make enough money to eat.
That's terrible. And for one man, the public humiliation, corruption, unemployment, and bribery had gone on long enough. Mohammed Bouazizi felt so strongly that in an incredible act of protest, he set himself ablaze in the town square in front of the government's office. Word spread fast, and soon protests and rallies were organized in indignation of the quality of life in Tunisia.
From what I've heard, in the 6 months following that act, nearly 107 more Tunisians did the same thing. This caused civil disobedience, more demonstrations across the region, and protests. And in response to this, the governments hacked Facebook and Twitter accounts and censored the media, making it nearly impossible for people to get the word across of what's going on.
That's scary stuff. All of these protests and rebellions would lead to the overthrow of Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in January of 2011. In October of the same year, Tunisians proudly elected a new constitution and voted in Monsef Marzouki in a democratic parliamentary election.
And this seemed to have rubbed off on Egypt because soon after this caused the people of Egypt to do the same thing, organize in the same way, using social media to start these protests. And in response to this, Egypt shut down the internet on the night before of the major revolution that went down there. Yet Google and Twitter's voice-to-Twitter program allowed people to just use their cell phones to tweet and not have to use internet service or use of a social media app.
That's amazing. They just make a call and a tweet gets made.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the government's high-tech attempts to prevent protests by severing internet access, their plan backfired when all those who were expecting to find out about protests from social media took to the streets to find out what was happening. As the masses gathered, President Hosni Mubarak announced he would be resigning and power was handed over to the military.
And then shortly after this, if I'm correct, in the first democratic election ever held there, supposedly Mohamed Morsi revoked a decree that originally limited his power, returning his full power to office, which allowed him to nearly do whatever he wanted. And this was all taken away during Mubarak's term, which, for obvious reasons, since he wasn't doing the right things, they took his power away. And 1 year later, after Morsi is elected, the military deposes him and they replaced him with an interim government so they could get things figured out.
Even still, civil unrest was growing rapidly in Libya after the fall of the Tunisian and Egyptian governments. And in February of 2011, security forces open-fired live rounds on Libyan rally protesters in Benghazi, sparking full-on revolt in several cities, finally reaching Tripoli.
And then in response to this, in Libya, eastern Libya especially, internet and calls were completely cut off. And with a TV address by Saif al-Islam Gaddafi on February 20th, he says, if things aren't done, the country could go into a civil war, increasing the death toll way farther into the thousands. And along with this, a no-fly zone implemented by the UN allowed bombing campaigns against Gaddafi forces to begin, with the US, UK, and France carrying them out.
Right. And in August, Tripoli was taken by anti-Gaddafi forces, dismantling the 42-year-long Gaddafi government. However, Gaddafi regroups with some of his high-ranking government officials in Sirte and declares it the new capital. But on the 20th of October, the National Transitional Council killed him.
So this must have rubbed off onto Yemen as well, because in Yemen, January 2011, the country becomes destabilized with protests calling for a new constitution and Ali Abdullah Saleh's resignation. And this, along with everything else that's gone on, social media was the main factor in driving these political debates, driving demonstrations, protests, and any talks
Communication.
any talks of online revolution, liberty, and democracy often preceded major events on the ground, and through this, it all helped spread democratic ideas across international borders.
Right, so thank social media for freedom in the Middle East.
Yeah, there was nothing else that could have been done.